Today I'm making a classic country white bread in my KitchenAid stand mixer. This is a soft, simple, hearty loaf made with ingredients from the farm and country, like milk, eggs, and butter. Welcome y'all to Robin on the Farm. Today I'm making a classic country white bread. This country white bread has such a good, soft, tender crumb because of the additions of milk, butter, and an egg. This makes fantastic sandwich bread. But it's also really versatile. You can use this bread for anything. Today I'm going to use my KitchenAid stand mixer to make this country white bread, but I've also used my Bosch mixer, my Zacme mixer. You can use any mixer that you want. You can also make this by hand, or you can even use your bread machine to make this recipe, and I'll leave directions down below on how to use your bread machine too. So let's just get started on this really simple and easy recipe for country white bread. Now, down in the description, I'm going to leave you this recipe in cups and spoons and in grams. Today I'm going to make 1 loaf of bread, but I'll also leave you the recipe to make 2 loaves of bread. So you have the options there. To get started, I'm going to use 1 cup of warm milk. This is about 100 to 105 degrees. I just popped this in the microwave for about a minute. It's nice and warm now, and this is what you want to help activate your yeast. I always use whole milk in my recipes, but for this recipe, you can use any milk that you want. It can be skim milk, 1%, 2%, oat milk, almond milk, any kind of milk alternative will work just fine. But you want 1 cup of warm milk right on into your bowl. So just pour that into your stand mixer. And next I'm going to add 1 egg, 1 large egg. Put that right on in there. And next we want some butter. You want 4 tablespoons of melted butter. This is my Lodge cast iron melting pot. I love this cast iron melting pot. I love all things cast iron, but I really get a lot of use out of this melting pot. So you want 4 tablespoons right on into your mixing bowl. Now I use salted butter, but really I just use whatever's on sale. So normally I use salted butter, but you can also use unsalted butter if you want. It's not really gonna make that big of a difference for this recipe. So you can see that we've used milk, an egg, and some butter. All things from around the farm or that you'd find in the country. And these things are gonna give us a really good, soft sandwich bread. Okay, after this, now I'm gonna use 3 tablespoons of brown sugar. You can also use white sugar. You can even use honey or maple syrup. Any of those will work. But for this recipe, I'm gonna use 3 tablespoons of packed brown sugar. You can use light brown sugar or dark brown sugar. This is light brown sugar. I'm gonna put that right on in there. Now it's time for some yeast. Today I'm going to use this instant yeast, but I just as often make this same recipe using active dry yeast. Either one will work just fine, so use what you have. But I like to buy my yeast in these 1 or 2 pound bricks, and then I store it in my freezer. I get it out right in time to make bread. I use it and I put it back in the freezer. That way your yeast will last for years past the expiration date and stay good and active and give really good rise to your bread. It's also way cheaper, way more economical to buy your yeast in these bigger containers than in those little packets or those little jars that you see at the grocery store. Last I looked, this 1 pound package of yeast costs the same as those little jars at the grocery store. This is a way better deal, you get way more. Now, if you have those little packets are each 2 1/4 teaspoons. Today for this recipe, we want 1 teaspoon of yeast. So go ahead and put 1 teaspoon of yeast right on in with your other ingredients. Now it's time for some flour. Now for this country white bread, you can either use all-purpose flour or bread flour. I really prefer using bread flour. Bread flour has a higher protein content than all-purpose flour, and as you knead it, the gluten gets developed better and it'll give you a higher rise to your bread, plus a little bit chewier of a texture, and I like that in my breads. So today I'm gonna use this bread flour, and I'm gonna use 3 1/2 cups. I'm just gonna put that right on into my mixing bowl. Now you can see that I have my flour stored in this big 5-gallon bucket. And what I like to do is I like to buy my flours in bulk. I like to buy them in big 25-pound bags. A 25-pound bag fits perfectly in this 5-gallon bucket. And then I put these really great gamma lids on top. They twist on, they seal up my flour really well, and then I put this in the pantry and I grab it out just to make bread, and it makes it really convenient. Okay, so 3½ cups of flour. But like I said, you can use all-purpose flour just as well. Our very last ingredient already for our country white bread is some salt. You want 1 teaspoon of salt. Now definitely don't pour it over your mixing bowl in case you over pour, because you will ruin your entire loaf of bread if you do that. You can use any salt that you want. This is my Redmond's real salt. This is what I use in all my baking, and I love this salt. It's also a beautiful pink color. This is a North American ancient fine sea salt. And those are already all of our ingredients for our country white bread. So it's time to get this mixer going. Now, you want to use the dough hook. That's the attachment that you want. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this going. I'm gonna turn this on to speed 1, just the lowest level. And I'm gonna let this mix up my dough, and I can look at it and see if it needs a little bit more flour, a little bit more water, just after a minute or 2. But I'll show you exactly what yours should look like. Once I know that my dough looks good, then I'm gonna turn it up to speed 2 and let this knead for 6 to 8 minutes. I just started my mixer about 30 seconds ago, and I'm just gonna give it a minute or 2 to mix up this dough. And then I'll look and assess if it needs a little bit more flour or a little bit more water. If it looks too wet, then I'll add some more flour. If it looks too dry, then I'll add a little bit more water or milk. I've given my stand mixer about 2 minutes to mix up my dough really well, get all of those ingredients incorporated really well. And this is when I like to assess my dough. Look at that. It's not too wet, it's not sticking to the sides or to the bottom. It's nice and smooth looking, so I know it's not too dry. So what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna turn it up to speed 2 and let it continue kneading for about 6 to 8 minutes. And then it'll be time to let it rise. But I'll show it to you then. I let my mixer knead my dough for a total of 8 minutes. I let it knead on speed 1 for 2 minutes, and then I checked on my ball of dough to make sure it wasn't too wet or too dry. And let me just tell you, that is the most important part of bread making. If yours is too wet or too dry, your bread is not going to turn out well at all. And so many things influence how much flour and water you need. Even if you measure to the gram exactly right, depending on your weather that day, your location, the time of year, so many things influence how much flour or water you need. So be sure to read your dough, look and see if it needs a little bit more flour or water. It's a really simple step, and it'll make the biggest difference in your bread making. After I checked on my ball of dough, then I turned it up to speed 2 and I let it knead for an additional 6 minutes. So 8 minutes altogether. Now let's check out this ball of dough. This is looking really good. So this is what you want your dough to look like. Look at this. This is so nice. I wish that you could touch it. I wish that you could feel it. Then you would know exactly what yours should be like, but hopefully you can tell. It's not sticky, but it is tacky. It's not too dry. Such a nice ball of dough. I can tell this is gonna make really good, soft and fluffy sandwich bread. Now it's time to let this dough rise. So I'm gonna throw it back into this bowl. You can use a different bowl if you want to, but I'm just gonna throw it back into this mixing bowl. And I'm gonna cover this up with a warm, wet tea towel. Now it's time to let it rise. This is gonna take anywhere from 45 minutes to about an hour and a half, just depending on the temperature of your home, your altitude. Lots of things affect the rise time. But what you're looking for is for your dough to get puffy, expanded, not necessarily doubled in size, but definitely expanded and puffy. I'm gonna let this rise probably for about an hour, and then I'll show you exactly what it looks like so you know exactly what yours should look like. This is what my dough looks like at the beginning of the rise. And here is the dough after rising for an hour. Look at that. You can see that it's puffy, it's expanded. This looks exactly right. Now that the dough for my country white bread has risen really well, really nicely, this is exactly what you want yours to look like. Now it's time to punch it down and turn it out and shape it into a loaf. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna literally punch this dough down while it's in the bowl. Just deflate it, get all that air out of it, and then turn it out from your mixing bowl. Now I'm gonna take this and I'm just gonna press it out with my hands. You can roll it out if you want to with a rolling pin, but it's just as easy just to press it out with your hands. All right, now I like to get mine about as wide as my loaf pan is long. Now, this is an 8.5 by 4.5 inch cast iron loaf pan. I love my cast iron, and I especially love my cast iron loaf pans. This has got to be the best $20 I've ever spent. I get so much use out of this, and I love how the cast iron bakes my bread so well. There's none of those coatings or chemicals to get into our food, so this is a really good, healthy way to go for baking bread. Now, I did pour about a tablespoon of olive oil into this loaf pan. I spread it all around with a paper towel, and now it's ready to go. So you can shape your loaf any way that you want. You can just roll it into a log. I like to do the head down, shoulders in method. So you pull the head down, press it out with the palms of your hand, pull in the shoulders or the sides, and then press that out really good. And then just roll it into a nice tight log. This will give you really great surface tension for your bread, give you a really pretty shape, a nice domed top to your bread. Now just press the seams together so that it doesn't burst while it's baking. Kind of pat that out really well. Flip it over. There we go. And that's all it takes. Now I'm just going to throw this into my loaf pan. And now it's time to let this rise for the second time. I'm going to let this rise in the loaf pan on my countertop. And this can take anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour, maybe even more, just depending on the temperature of your home, your elevation. Lots of different things determine how long it's going to take your loaf to rise. But what you are looking for is that it just kind of peeks over the side of your loaf pan, maybe 1/2 inch over. So I will show you exactly what it should look like when it's risen and it's ready to throw in the oven. In just a few minutes, I'm going to go ahead and get my oven preheated to 350 degrees so that when this is risen, I can throw it in there, because I definitely don't want my bread to over rise, because then the texture will be all off. So I'll show it to you in about 30 to 45 minutes for me. While I'm waiting on my dough to rise and my oven to preheat, I thought I'd tell you a little bit about our beeswax bread bags. These are handmade by my daughters and me right here on our family farm, actually right here in this very kitchen. We make these at our kitchen table. We measure them, iron them, cut them, sew them, infuse them with wax right here. They're breathable, naturally antibacterial, moisture regulating. This is how I like to store my breads. So if you're looking for a good alternative to plastic bags, check out our beeswax bread bags. We have lots of really cute patterns. These are just a few of them. These are some of my very favorites. This is our new pattern, wild sunflowers, peaches, because I'm a Georgia peach, and also one of my very favorite ones, farm animals. Thank you to everyone who has ordered from us. Your support has been overwhelming, and I just want to tell you thank you so much. The dough for my country white bread has been rising in the loaf pan for about 45 minutes. Do you see how it's just peeking up over the side of the loaf pan? This looks just right. This is exactly what you want yours to look like when you put it in the oven to bake. So my oven's preheated to 350 degrees, and I'm gonna let this bake for 30 minutes, and I'll show it to you when it's ready. I just pulled our loaf of country white bread out of the oven. Look how good this looks. I let this bake at 350 degrees for 32 minutes. 32 minutes because I got a little bit busy. But let's go ahead and turn this out of the loaf pan. See how it just slid out of the cast iron loaf pan because I oiled it up really well? Look at this gorgeous little loaf of bread. Doesn't this look pretty? Okay, this is what I like to do with my breads. Once I get them out of the loaf pan, then I like to take a little bit of melted butter. I melted just a little bit of butter in this cast iron melting pot, and I am just gonna slather this butter all over the crust. This gives you that pretty shine, that yummy buttery flavor, plus it gives you a really good soft crust, which I love for my sandwich breads. Now you can just slather this on the top, or you can go all the way around if you want to. It does make it taste really good. Now, after I put the butter on it, then I like to take a tea towel, and instead of using a cooling rack, I don't like using cooling racks. I like to put a tea towel over my bread, kind of wrap it up, and all that warmth, the condensation will give you a really good soft crust to your bread. So this is how I like to do it. Now I'm gonna let it cool for a little bit. If you let your bread totally cool before you slice into it, you're gonna get a better crumb and a better texture out of your bread. But who can resist nice, warm, homemade bread fresh from the oven? I sure can't. So I'm gonna let this cool just for a few minutes so it's not too hot, and then we'll slice into it and check it out. It is time to slice into our loaf of country white bread. Look how pretty this loaf turned out. This looks fantastic, and I cannot wait to eat a little slice of this bread. It smells so good. All right, let's go ahead and slice into it. Now this loaf is still warm, and I am glad because I am ready to eat this. Oh, it looks great. Now, like I always say, I slice into mine warm. If you let it cool all the way, then you'll get a better crumb, better texture out of your bread. So I should have waited a little bit longer, but oh, this looks fantastic. I cannot wait to try it. Okay, I always try a little piece of the heel because that's what I love. It's perfect. This loaf is fantastic for sandwiches and just for enjoying with some butter, some jam, some honey, some peanut butter and jelly. Oh, what a yummy loaf. Be sure to print off the recipe, make this loaf, come back and let me know how you like it. Thanks so much for being here with me on Robin on the Farm. I will see y'all next time.
Robin's in the kitchen, dough beneath her hands, wheat from the fields and eggs from her land. Sunlight through the window, a warm golden glow. She's working hard to make that dough. With flour on her apron, loving each need.